Hello, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's episode of Demystifying Working with Microsoft. And before we get started, I'd love it if you can drop in the comments if you're joining us live, where you're calling in from, and most importantly, if you've got any questions for my guests today, drop them in the comments. And with that, I'm excited to introduce Lily, uh, Lily Dowdudane and Dennis Guzzi. Welcome, Lily. Welcome, Dennis.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, I'm very
Thank you.
excited for our call today. So, to get started, maybe we could start with a little bit of background from you, Lily, first, and then Dennis, we'll turn it over to you and just share with our audience a little bit about your background, what your role is today in the Microsoft Federal Group, and we'll go from there.
Sure, sounds great. So my name's Lily Davidian. I've been at Microsoft for about 6 years now. I've spent the last year leading a team of technical sellers covering the Department of Defense, focusing on security. So we cover all things Azure and M365 security. And before that, I worked in engineering, and my priority was really features that helped customers leverage investments they've made in our security ecosystem, and how can we think about integrations that we might have with partners, and how we really plug into that broader security ecosystem to bring value to customers. So super excited to be here.
Great, great. Excited to have you. And it sounds like you've got some background on both sides, sort of internally building and then externally selling and working directly with customers. So it'd be a great insights. And Dennis, over to you.
Yep, my name is Dennis Guzzi. I am Lily's peer leading the Microsoft Federal DoD security team here, and I've been at Microsoft 16 years. I came from state government here in Pennsylvania, where I'm located at right now. I was in government for almost 10 years before joining Microsoft. My entire Microsoft career has been focused on government. The majority of my career initially was in state government before moving over to work with the federal government customers. So I've either worked for the government or supported selling to state and local government or the federal government for essentially my entire adult life. So excited to talk today.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thanks both for joining. And maybe to start off, Lily, you could share with us the mission of Microsoft Federal. So, what are you focused on as an organization? What are the sort of hot buttons for you and your customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So generally at Microsoft, I mean, we all know our mission is to empower everyone to achieve more. And in the federal space specifically, my team is thinking about how can we protect the warfighter with our security suite. And that really extends beyond just the typical like product, how can Sentinel help get telemetry? It's like, how can we use the signal that we bring in, the security expertise that we have to really equip the warfighter behind the scenes with everything that they need to be successful. And it's something that we take really seriously. A lot of my team served. Our kind of fearless leader, Vishal, was a fighter pilot before coming to Microsoft. And so for us, it's a really culture driven mission of how can we defend those who are doing their best to protect us every single day, and how can we use our security expertise to do that.
It sounds like it's a really personal mission for a lot of the folks on your team too.
It is. I mean, Dennis and I this morning, we were just on a 5K with the whole team for the Travis Manion Foundation, which I know, Rob, you're also familiar with. So for us, the culture and that aspect is super important, and something that we think about every day when coming to our remote work.
Great, great. Well, Dennis, maybe you can share with us a little bit about the types of partners you work with in Microsoft Federal. So I know that that's a big part of your go-to-market motion is really working closely with partners. But thinking about it sort of at that sort of 50,000 foot view is what type of partners do you typically work with?
Yeah, we work with a number of different types of partners on a day-to-day basis. Everything from the systems integrators to the solution providers to the product developers. So when we talk about the partners that we work with on any given day, there's the build with bolt on scenarios. There's the we're building from the ground up. We're helping the customer develop using our tools, our platforms. It's a wide range of types of partners, and with that brings the different types of complexities, that go along with those types of engagements, from a partner standpoint. So, our interactions with partners are not, there's no standard one type of conversation we have because of just the varying degrees of partners. And then when you add on, some of the complexities that exist in the federal government space in terms of, logistical requirements or legislative requirements and things like that, it just adds some additional layers on top that have to be factored into all those nuances of the types of partners that we interact with.
Interesting. So, and it sounds like it's not, you mentioned systems integrators and, the concept of an ISV or the independent software providers, that it sounds like they all need to come together to really provide solutions and come up with answers to really big problems for what the federal government is dealing with. Is that fair?
I think that's a fair assessment. And I think one of the things that happens, especially in that space, is you start to see a need to look at some of those requirements from the regulatory and compliance perspective that have to flow into the way that the way that those partners especially have to craft and build those integrated offerings, and the way that they integrate their connection from a partner into the customer perspective. That's where we see some of the nuance, especially from that complexity standpoint, because oftentimes they have to adopt or adapt to what the customer is doing and from what the customer's implemented inside of their environment to map and match in terms of some of those integration points.
Okay. Great. Well, Lily, maybe you could weigh in for us on terms of, I imagine you are day-to-day seeing a lot of partners, working with a lot of partners. Share with us some of the best practices that you see in the federal space, those partners that are playing in that federal space.
Yeah, it's a great point. So, as Dennis mentioned, we work with a ton of partners. We try and do a lot at Microsoft, but we can't do anything without our partners. We joke that Microsoft runs on partners, but it's very true, especially in the security space and in the federal space. To Dennis's point, there are so many nuances, and we need to bring together the entire ecosystem to think holistically about how we're helping, the end user and the DoD. So we work with a lot of partners, and they're all great. I think for us, willingness to go above and beyond. I think we go above and beyond for our partners every day, the same way we do for our customers. And when we see that reciprocated, it's super important to us. And generally, just being communicative sounds silly and rudimentary, but our best partners are the ones that we communicate with really openly, really freely. And there is that element of culture, right? Like, who is thinking about the mission the way that we are? Who is really thinking about what the DoD is trying to do and how we can enable them in the same way? So some of the partners that we work with the most closely are ones that we also frequently are like having dinner with or inviting to events, just because we really see eye to eye on the way that we're working to bring security to the forefront of everything that the DoD is doing.
Yeah, I guess to your point there, it's very mission driven. And I think one of the other challenges I've got to imagine you deal with is that when you're working with the DoD, it's not just one type of partner. It's not just Microsoft partners that you need to work with and integrate with. It's a wide variety of and range of partners. Do you see that, in the as that's something that's important to be able to work with all kinds of different partners and be open to working with other partners?
Yes, we work with many different types of partners. I work the most with partners that we collaborate on from like a technical perspective in terms of who's releasing products that we could integrate with or that help complement the security that we provide. So that's something that I'm hyper focused on. We also have a lot of partners on the services side. So how can we make sure that once the DoD commits to using some of our security tooling, that we can empower them to use it to the best of its ability? And a lot of that involves that manpower of just sitting side by side with them, helping them deploy it. That's almost as important as the technology itself. So many different types of partners, and they're all special and different in their own way. But again, the ones that we work with so well are just those that are good communicators. We're all kind of trying to do what's best for the customer, regardless of, how hard it might be.
Right.
And we've seen a lot of success, especially recently, in terms of customers wanting to come to serve the DoD. I think it's a really big and kind of untapped market, and we're seeing a lot of partners also really excited about the mission there and wanting to help. And it's a challenging space to be in. I think Dennis can speak to that a bit more. It's not easy, but we are seeing a lot of partners kind of shifting their focus to the U.S. government space, which is super exciting.
So expanding from, say, commercial into working with the federal government.
Yeah, it's a whole new world for them.
Well, on that topic, Dennis, maybe you could take a few minutes and share with us, partners that are coming from that world of, the commercial space into the federal government. What's some of the things that they should be thinking about or should expect to, either work differently or be different in terms of whether it be the sales motion, sales process, the timing, whatever it might be. I'd love to hear from you on that.
Sure. So again, because this is basically a space that I've lived in my whole life, and while state and local government is obviously not the same as the federal government, they're very close siblings in this space. But when it comes to thinking about engaging this type of customer and moving from that commercial aspect and focusing on federal customers and even more specifically DoD customers, the amount of time that it takes to engage and transact at times in the commercial space and other segments that a partner might deal with, you have an idea, you talk about the idea, you plan for the idea, you execute on the idea. In our space, there's a lot of stop and start. There's budgets, there's continuing resolutions, there's delays, there's motions, there's executive orders, there's regulations and compliance, and all of these factors and facets that go into your ability to potentially execute. And then on top of all of those things, you have to then have the ability to, from a transactional standpoint, have a contracting vehicle to be able to execute. Now, a lot of that for some partners can seem overwhelming. Why do I want to get into this space? At the same time, there's so much opportunity. And, from that mission perspective, the ability to have the impact for the types of customers. And again, selfishly, Lily and I work with the DoD customers, and to think about that ability to protect, from us, we focus on security, obviously protecting, our warfighters. There's no greater gift that we have in the ability to do that. But when you can overcome a number of those challenges and respect that process is very different than the things that you're used to, and factor that into how you approach growth in this space and recognize it's a longer journey. It's not a quick turnaround getting there. There can be significant rewards. So our best partners in the space are ones that, and Lily mentioned it, where they have invested and said, we know up front, and we have a number of partners and they know us, they work with us quite often right now, where they say, we know we have to put some effort into this right now and put time into it and put some resources into it now and invest, knowing that the outcome at the end is those opportunities to engage both the customer, the contracting, those things will come. It just takes time. And anybody who's watched recent, budget actions and things unfold in the news or, in the media and things like that, recognizes that you're at the mercy of a number of those things. And when you operate in this space, those things are a dramatic part of the way that you have to operate. Microsoft partners included, we're all at the mercy of a number of those things.
Right. So it's really you're playing a different game, a much longer game, and one that there's maybe a few more rules that are put on top of you versus, rules.
I had one of our partners that I love working with said they love the space because the opportunity, the growth, the potential, the revenue they could potentially get over time, but they described it as working with the federal government is like playing chess, and there are other spaces they work in is like playing checkers. And I don't know if that's the best quote, but I love the way they describe that because they have to really plan out.
Yeah.
It's not a single move, operation. They have to think 3, 4, and 5 moves ahead in every way that they approach the business. But when you win, you can win big, and it's a great
Right.
space to be.
Yeah, and I think just the mission overall, like the thought of being able to lean in and protect the warfighter, there is no greater mission in my mind for what we can bring to the table. So I really
Exactly.
appreciate you
Exactly.
sharing that. One of the other areas, and I'm not sure who would be best to answer this, but is, as I think about partners that want to move into the federal space, I think about all the different regulations that are going on and the things that are changing almost, it seems, daily. There's, new regulations coming down. What would you recommend to a partner that's considering the federal space? Like, where do they start? We hear CMMC, Joint Surveillance Act. We hear all these different terms thrown around, but what should a partner be thinking about when doing that? And there's the concept of a sub versus a prime. Maybe one of you could lean in on that for us.
So we can both answer it from different angles. So personally, when we think about the end user, like the DoD customers, I love all of the regulation that's coming out because I feel like compliance has been a really good springboard to security for us. I think it started with CMMC. We've seen, NIST has been around forever. The executive order that came out, I think, was a big next step, 14028 by the Biden administration. And then more recently, we saw the DoD requirements around zero trust. And I think it's really awesome because the government is taking, the general concept of like security and compliance to the next level and being like, here's exactly how we want you to meet all of these requirements. And we're trying to help them with partners, ironically, do that as easy as possible. But of course, there's also the flip side of like, how do our partners in the DIB space need to think about their own CMMC compliance and things like that. And so another way that we work with partners that's a bit anomalous is we're also empowering them to meet the CMMC requirements, right? We have basically workbooks in Microsoft Sentinel that help you understand your alignment. There's a host of things in Purview that help you check your compliance posture. So there are also a lot of ways that we're working with partners to empower them to be the best partner that they can be, which is kind of funny because when we think about partnering, that's not typically the relationship that people imagine, but there's a lot that we're doing from a product perspective to also make it easier for them to operate on our platform and to then partner with the US government.
And I just wanted to dig in on one point. You used an acronym DIB, and maybe you could share what that is in case someone doesn't know.
Sure, the Defense Industrial Base, which is kind of how we refer to, the network of partners that support the DoD.
Right. I think that's a really important distinction there is that there's not only the federal government that these regulations impact, but if you're working with a defense industrial base customer, someone that's supplying the federal government, those regulations potentially flow down to you and to your organization. So as a Microsoft partner, I think it's important to realize that yes, there's the federal government very clearly that's delineated, but there's this set of customers that support the federal government. So I think that's important. Dennis, anything to add to what Lily was saying?
I think if you are a partner and you are trying to figure out from a security perspective, Lily mentioned the EO, the Executive Order 14028 is probably for me is kind of that's a benchmark one. Microsoft, for example, we released a workbook for Sentinel that helps drive alignment there. If you were a partner and you were wanted to have an idea of how we're trying to drive customers to understand their alignment, for example, you could look at something like that. That EO is probably going to be one of the most impactful in driving action around bringing about a more secure government in general. There's, of course, and Lily mentioned it, from CMMC to, NIST like 853 and, having meeting FedRAMP ATOs. But that EO, that's the thing. If you're going to look at something and say, okay, how do I meet and align? Because that also, to Lily's point about flowing through to the DIB and, to those other, subsequent environments that have to support the federal government, support the DoD. that EO flows through all the way through, those partners who support the ISVs, et cetera. So that's one where I would that's my lean in on. Like, that's the one where you understand the requirements, the expectations. We've put out a bunch of information to help support and help our partners and our customers understand how we are helping enable. But from that end, it's the points to integrate. And one last thing that I do want to add to this: if you're a partner who wants to work with Microsoft and support this space, our goal, and if you want to come to us, and I want to just bring it back to a piece of guidance earlier, our goal isn't to always just throw every Microsoft product at every customer for every scenario. A number of our customers have products where they've got cost that's been sunk in, and or there are other products or providers who have services out there that customers have made investments in that integrate into that EO, that zero trust executive order that is out there, that we partner with. We bring those signals in, that we are part of our Intelligence Security Association. If you want to be a great partner with Microsoft and you want to do well in supporting that executive order, it isn't just about partnering with Microsoft and saying, hey, I know how to use Sentinel or a specific product. It's understanding that part of our goal is to actually be a great partner in the overall security community and connect those signals and do what it takes to make the customer more secure, including helping them get those signals and empower the products that they've got already to be better at the things that they're doing, not just sell them a bunch of Microsoft stuff.
Right. It sounds like really bringing the entire ecosystem together to protect the to protect them, regardless of whether it's a competitive product or not. It's how do we help defend the warfighter? How do we help bring all this information together to be more beneficial for the organization?
Exactly.
So we do have one quick question, and maybe.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say that's why we have that Intelligence Security Association, to bring together that partnership of all of these different providers of solutions so that we can share, communicate, and operate more cohesively together.
Great. Maybe if you could share the executive order one more time, just so that Seth can
put
up that.
14028.
There you go, Seth. Excellent. Well, what I'd like to do is just pivot real quick, and we've only got a few minutes left. So, Lily, I'll turn this over to you and ask you, is in terms of what you see with partners that maybe is challenging for them, or is the thing that if they could do this one thing better, that would really improve their ability to operate within the Microsoft Federal space?
It's a hard one. I mean, I will say, I think we have really amazing relationships with our partners. It definitely has been something we've been building over time. So I think it kind of goes back to what we've seen of what are the most positive attributes of partners and how do we work with them best. And again, that goes back to that communication and willingness to help. So I think what I'll say is, if you're a partner and you think that you plug into that general security ecosystem, whether that's through having a really innovative, cutting edge security solution that we haven't thought about, or whether that's the way that you can empower the customer to maybe turn on some of the security tooling, we are always here, and we want to hear from you, and we want to work with you. We really are such a partner-first organization. So I think it's reach out to us, be willing to teach us about what you do, and to learn from us about how we can work well together. And I'm really optimistic about what the next few years are going to bring for Microsoft and with our partners.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on. There's a lot of innovation going on. Partners are doing some amazing things. I think that we're seeing ISVs step up and really deliver some unique solutions, and then partnering with that systems integrator community. It really is. It's going to be fun to watch over the next few years.
It's a completely new perspective, and it really helps us shift the way that we think about security. We've innovated and done simple things like build new detections based on telemetry that we get from partners. So there's a huge impact to the way that we think about security based on those insights, and we're always looking to hear more of them. So really appreciate you having us.
No, great, great. And Dennis, as we're closing out, any final thoughts or any last words you'd like to share with the partner community?
My biggest piece of advice for anyone who wants to transact with the federal government space, you could have the greatest idea, the greatest solution, the greatest product, the greatest new something that nobody's ever heard or seen before. If you don't invest early on in how you can transact and how you can execute and how the customer can pay you and how you can process something, none of it matters. And there are so many partners who have the greatest new something that we want to partner with at Microsoft, who the biggest impetus to them being able to provide great value to the customers in the federal government space is their inability to transact. Invest early on in understanding how to transact with the federal government. That will save you loads of effort and headache at the end, because we want to partner with you. As Lily said, we love connecting with you. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Both of us are obviously very active on LinkedIn. We want to talk to you. We want to connect with you. Just please invest early on the licensing and transaction aspects with the federal government.
Yeah, to your earlier point about the contract vehicles, understand how that works. And if you don't understand that, nothing else matters, because you're dead in the water, if I'm hearing you right.
Yeah. Exactly. If you can't get paid for your great idea, what are you in the game for?
Right, absolutely. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Lily, Dennis, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your thoughts about partnering with Microsoft Federal. I know that our partner community is getting a huge amount of value, so thanks for that. And I wish you all the best for the rest of your day and the rest of the week.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a great
Bye.
day.